Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the history of the world. Today we're talking about China, early China in particular. And one of the big things about understanding China is the Chinese dynasty song. So the first part of that is Shang Chou Qin Han, Shang Chou Qin Han. So let's talk about the Shang. So a lot of what we know about the Shang comes from this practice that they have called oracle bones. So they take bones and like write stuff on it, then they put it in a fire, and like how it cracked is like what the fortune would be, so or like what the oracle's predictions were. So that's a lot of what we know about the Shang. And again, what two rivers are Chinese civilization between? The Yellow and the Yangtze. Excellent. So yeah, and so the ethnic group of the Chinese, they are the Han. They are the Han. Yeah. So you have the Shang, and then the Shang give way to the Zhou. And the Zhou are the longest lasting dynasty, there for about 1,000 years. And towards the end of the Zhou, it starts to break down, and that is the Warring States period of China. And after that, there's the Qin dynasty. The Qin built the Great Wall, but we'll get to all that. All right, so you have blah 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 societies formed. Okay, so one of the cool things about China is their religious system is it's kind of a blend of stuff. So one of the big traditions is like the veneration of ancestors, so like ancestor worship, and that they remember their ancestors, and there's like maybe not as much now, but in the past there's been like a quasi-religious tinge to like your ancestors and venerating them and making sure that you're giving them their due diligence and honoring them. One of the things that comes about, especially during the Zhou dynasty though, are some other, they're not as much religions, because it has like a different idea of like God and morality and stuff like that. You have Confucianism. You got Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism is even less quasi-religious. So you got Confucianism. Two of the big things about Confucianism. So you got the fact that so Confucianism focuses a lot on relations between people and government, filial relations like father-son, father-priest, father-government. So they have like key relationships. So it's very relationship-centric. And another key thing is education. You want to have an educated populace. It's good to be educated. So if you're one of the leaders of China, it is a good thing for your populace to be Confucian, right? Because they are going to pride themselves on education and on, having good relationships with each other. So the Chinese government and the emperor definitely are fans of Confucianism. Another big one is Taoism, and Taoism is kind of a more, it's a very naturalist thing. They're very big on humanity's relationship with nature and stuff like that, making sure humanity is going in with the natural order. And one of the big things that falls more under Taoism than Confucianism is a Chinese ideal of yin and yang, like two forces that are always kind of at balance in civilization and in basically everything. And then there's legalism. And to jump back, so Confucianism, that's founded by Confucius, and Taoism, that is by Lao Tzu. It's a couple of different ways to say his name. And then legalism. Legalism doesn't have like one founder, but it's a ideology that's very big in the Qin dynasty, so they're right next to each other, which is again a lot like Hammurabi's code, like very, someone does something bad, you punish them. So, so legalism is a lot like Hammurabi's code, and it's very legalist. That's why it's called legalism. All right. Yes. So after you have the Warring States period, and then you get the Qin dynasty out of that. And so let's talk about that a little bit for a sec. How there's like different dynasties. There's this thing in China which is kind of a running theme in Chinese history of the mandates of heaven, or the mandate of heaven, wherein at the beginning of a dynasty. Okay, and another thing, heaven, like they mention heaven a lot in like Chinese history. What heaven is referring to is kind of like a blanket, the gods slash all the metaphysical forces, everything that's more than man, more than can be seen. So like the forces of heaven are dictating China's government. So you can see like in the beginning of say the Zhou dynasty, it was good, they have the mandate of heaven, but then when stuff starts to break down, then the peasantry and like the nobility can say, okay, this government has lost the mandate of heaven, it's time to move to the next dynasty and start the cycle again. So yeah, so anyway, so that's kind of like a cyclical thing. So you go Shang to Zhou, Zhou to Qin, and what's in between the Zhou and the Qin? Warring States period. Excellent, I'm proud of you. And then from Qin to Han, and then so forth and so on. And that's about it for China right now. And a couple of quick review things. So remember, Shang, Oracle Bones, Zhou, that's like Confucius, and it's Zhou, it's not Zhao. Qin, that's the Great Wall, they built the Great Wall, and the guy who like kind of unifies the Qin after the Great War, or Warring States periods, is Qin Shi Huangdi. And Huangdi is how you say emperor in China now, in Chinese now. And the Han, they follow up the Chinese, and they follow up the Qin, and they are contemporaries with the Romans. And there's actually one historical account that the Han may have actually fought the Romans, which is kind of cool. Like the Chinese source describes like an army around like here. So you know the Romans have like this at one point. So like say one gets lost and they're going through like the mountains, and the Chinese like went out really far to the west, and so the Chinese described like an army that kind of like had moved like fish scales, and the Romans had like testudo, you know what I mean, where all the shields come in together. So it could have been the Romans, who knows. All right, well that's it for today. See you in next chapter.